Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Harmon Islamic Study Circle HISC Seerah session 211, where we'll be talking about the lessons to learn from the year of delegations. But a quick recap of the year of delegations and then putting it into some sort of context within the prophetic mission. And we talked when we started the year of delegations to say how delegations were essentially coming to see the Prophet ﷺ on and off from about the 5th or the 6th year of the Hijrah, right up until sort of a few weeks before he passed away. So there would be constant delegations coming, but all the authors, or most of the authors of the Seerah, rather than putting them chronologically, have put them, all these delegations, into sort of one big chapter. And that's how we've tried to approach it here, rather than chopping and changing and jumping from delegation to other event to delegation, because it provides a lot more context, and there's the learning that we can see from that process. So the first delegation that we did in session 2005 was the delegation of the tribe Abdul Qais from Bahrain, and we talked about how one of the people there, al-Hajj al-Usri bin al-Qais, he took his time. When the rest of the tribe came to see the Prophet ﷺ, he took his time, got ready, and made himself presentable before seeing the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ praised that particular approach in him. The Prophet ﷺ also went on to explain what Islam was, what Iman was, to all the different tribes that would come. Another one of the early delegations was the tribe of At-Tufail bin Amr Ad-Dawsi. Now, he had come, he was a tribal chief from the Daws tribe. So he had come in the Meccan period, and he had converted and become a Muslim. And there's a famous story of him being scared of listening to the words of the Prophet ﷺ because of the propaganda. So he would put cotton in his ears. And again, when he thought about that, he thought, well, I'm a grown man, I can make my own mind up. So he took the cotton out of his ears, listened to the Prophet ﷺ, and then became a Muslim. And again, there's lots of people around, certainly that I know, who walk around with cotton in their ears, who don't like to listen quietly to the other side of the story to find out what is going on and to make up their own mind. So an important lesson there. So At-Tufail, he became a Muslim, he returned to Yemen, and then he brought his tribe of Ad-Dawsi, which included Abu Huraira, later on in Medina. We also talked about the delegation from Bani Amir bin Sa-saa. This was the evil tribe that was responsible, some of the elders were responsible for the massacre at the Ma'una well. So where a lot of the Qurra were killed. Again, we talked about this before in the Seerah. And amongst the chiefs who came with this delegation of Bani Amir bin Sa-saa, there was Amr bin At-Tufail and Urwah bin Qais, and both of those had plotted to assassinate Prophet ﷺ, but obviously the plot was foiled, and they both died on their way back, and one of them, Urwah, was incinerated by a lightning bolt. Then we talked about Banu Sa'd ibn Bakr, who were a sub-tribe of the Hawazin tribe, and Banu Sa'd, they were the tribe of Halima, who was the foster mother of the Prophet ﷺ, and their elder was a forthright Bedouin chief. His name was Dimam ibn Thalaba, and he asked the Prophet some stern questions, or asked him in a stern way, got the responses, became a Muslim, and then went back and converted the whole tribe on the same day, and they destroyed their idols. And there's a lot of blessings there for that tribe. Then we talked extensively about Banu Thaqif and the tribes from Taif. We prefaced it by the conversion of Urwah ibn Masud al-Thaqifi, who was a revered elder statesman from amongst the tribe, became a Muslim after the siege of Taif. decided not to migrate to Medina and said he would do Dawah in Taif himself. But the very first day of doing Dawah, he was shot by an arrow on his rooftop as he was doing the Adhan for Fajr. Later on, Taif would send a delegation to the Prophet's mosque where they stayed for 10 days. And then they started to have some discussions with the Prophet. They wanted him to compromise on riba, on interest, on zina and fornication, on alcohol, on idol worships, and the how to pray, how to do wudu, all of those things. And the Prophet he refused to compromise on those matters, and he appointed Uthman ibn al-Aws, Abu al-Aws, as their chief. And then we talked about the story about Mughira ibn Shu'bah, who was sent to destroy their main idol of Taif, which is the Lat. And they found some riches under the idol, but he played a little prank on the people as he was destroying the idol. The next session we talked about mainly about Bani Haneefa and Musailama al-Khattab, Musailama the Liar. But before that, one of the other chiefs of Banu Haneefa, we previously talked about Dimam ibn Thalaba, who was captured on his way to Makkah, was brought to Medina, tied to the pillar in Medina, was invited by the Prophet on 3 consecutive days to become a Muslim. He declined, and then he was set free. He left the mosque, did ghusl, came back, became a Muslim. And then one of the other people from that tribe, Musailama, given the title of the Liar, was part of a 17-strong delegation to meet the Prophet. And Musailama, he was quite arrogant, and he wanted leadership after the Prophet, or he wanted the Prophet to divide his territory in half. The Prophet said, look, I'm not even going to give you the stick that I've got in my hand. And he walked off. Musailama went back to Yamama, and later on sent some envoys to the Prophet, demanding the Prophet splits the kingdom, or as he saw it, the kingdom in half. And the Prophet said, look, if I was allowed to, because these two envoys, they said that they believed that Musailama was a righteous prophet. The Prophet said, look, if I was allowed to, I would have killed you too, but I can't. But anyway, Musailama, as soon as the Prophet passed away, he apostatized, claimed himself to be a prophet, and then that was part of the wars of Ridda. And then in the time of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, Wahshi, who had killed Hamza before, went and killed Musailama. And then we also mentioned the story of Ka'b ibn Zuhair bin Abu Sulma, who is a famous poet, originally vehemently anti-Muslim, who then fled Makkah after the conquest of Makkah, but then came back and embraced Islam and wrote a famous poem called the Su'ad. We'd also mentioned the following week the tribe of Dimam al-Dari, who came, and the Prophet was really excited to hear the story of Dimam al-Dari, where he claimed to have been washed up on a distant island and met a chained up ad-Dajjal. But the rest of the session we talked about some of the Yemeni princes. One of them was Waail ibn Hujr, where Prophet said that in a day or two someone's going to enter the mosque who has signs of kingship, and that was Waail ibn Hujr, who was allowed to stand alongside the Prophet on his minbar. And then on the way back, the Prophet dispatches a young Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan to accompany Waail. And Muawiyah said, look, can I borrow your shoes? Can I ride on your camel? And he was rebuffed. And then later on in life, Muawiyah becomes Khalif, and Waail has to go visit him and eat humble pie. We talked about how Allah censured one of the other tribes, Banu Asad ibn Khuzaymah, who were bragging about becoming a Muslim without being fought, etc. And then we spent some time talking about Adi ibn Hatim. So Adi ibn Hatim, he was the son of the legendary Hatim at-Taiy, who was a really generous person pre-Islam. His tribe was attacked and overrun by Ali bin Abi Talib before the Battle of Tabuk. He runs away in cowardice. His sister gets captured a prisoner of war. She negotiates her release, goes and treks down Adi ibn Hatim, who then comes to meet the Prophet in the ninth year of the Hijrah. Prophet and him have exchange and interfaith dialogue, you could say, and the Prophet schools him about his own religion, and in the end Adi ibn Hatim becomes a Muslim, and later on he asks the Prophet that, my father was well known for being generous, etc. Will he go to paradise because of that? And the Prophet said, well, your father desired something and he got what he desired. Again, very important lesson around sincerity behind actions, whatever types of actions, if it's dawah, if it's charity, if it's teaching, whatever it is, or any good deed needs to be done with the right intentions. And then last 2 weeks ago, we talked about the delegations, the Christian delegations from Najran, and the Prophet had been sending letters to the Christians of Najran. And there's a 3-point or a 3-step plan, essentially. You invite them to become Muslim. If they say no, then you ask them to accept the authority of the Muslims or Islamic rules above them. So they implement Islam as the political system, and they pay a jizya. If they refuse that, then you say, well, be ready for war. There's no time limit to this process per se, but that is the process that needs to be followed. So the Najranis, they sent a high-powered delegation, 60 plus Christians with their chiefs to Medina to negotiate with the Prophet. He let them stay in the Prophet's mosque. They even prayed their Christian ritual prayer in the Prophet's mosque. But anyway, the toing and froing, the interfaith dialogue wasn't really getting anywhere. Even Allah revealed 60 verses or so in Surah Al-Imran, answering some of their queries. But in the end, the Prophet called their bluff by challenging them to a mubahala, which is invoking Allah's curse on those that lie. Excuse me. But in the end, they agreed to pay jizya. And on the way back, one of their bishops, the senior people, patriarchs, he admitted that the Prophet was a righteous prophet, which upset his younger brother, who then went back to Medina and became a Muslim. We talked about how some of the miracles associated with the delegations, including the dates in Umar's house for the tribe of Musailama. We talked about how the tribe of Jurash had sent a couple of delegates to see the Prophet, but on the day that they arrived to see the Prophet, their tribe was being overrun by al-Surad, who had been sent to the Azd tribe, and they asked him to attack the tribe of Jurash. And then we did the story of Banu Tamim from the Najd, who the Prophet said, take the glad tidings, the bashara of Islam. They said, okay, fine, well, what else do you have to give us? As in, they were expecting some money. And then the Prophet gave their blessings essentially to the tribe of Himyar, which had come. But there's another story related to that, which I'll come on to, inshallah, which I forgot to mention a couple of weeks ago. And then last week, we did some of the Yemeni tribes. Some of the Yemeni kings and princes had been embracing Islam, sending letters and delegates to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet in response sent a couple of senior Sahabi to be their governors, to be their judge, to do Dawah, including Muadh ibn Jabal and Abu Musa al-Ashari. And we mentioned how Muadh was chosen because of his generosity in Islam, he became bankrupt. So the Prophet and then the long conversation the Prophet had with him as he's sending him to the Yemen to basically say, look, you might not see me again, but you're going to people with soft hearts, so be soft and gentle with them. Don't overburden them, don't try to unite them, not to disunite them, and essentially basically have a stepwise, incremental approach in implementing the rules of Islam. And the Prophet said to him, look, the people closest to me are the people of taqwa, wherever and whoever they are. And he approved of Muadh when Muadh says that he would do ijtihad on matters that he couldn't clearly find in the Quran or the Sunnah. And then we mentioned a short story about how Abu Musa al-Ashari was met up with Muadh, and Muadh was giving him advice on how best to read the Quran, but it's mainly about reframing your actions so that you get closer to Allah, get more reward for them. So even some of your habitual actions, if you don't do them in the right way for the right reason, for the sake of getting closer to Allah, can become acts of worship. We also mentioned some of the blessings of the people of Yemen, and some of the hadith related to some of the delegations, like the hadith of covering up and not sort of walking around naked even at home when there's no one around, and other aspects around the Seerah. But there was another delegation that I forgot to mention, and on top of that, just another story around Banu Tamim again, which I forgot to go through at the time. But there's one delegation from the Hamdan that had come in the 9th year of the Hijrah, the year of delegations, after the Prophet had come back from Tabuk, and they were discussing with the Prophet, and the Prophet agreed to give them a pledge, a guarantee, as a fulfillment of their demands. And he sent Malik bin Namt as their chief, and appointed him as his sort of agent over there. And then later on, the Prophet, because there aren't any significant battles this year, Prophet, he's trying to get the measure of some of the people. So Khalid bin Al-Waleed, we know, is a great tactician, and he's fantastic on the battlefield. So the Prophet wants to see how he would operate in a diplomatic environment. So that may be one of the reasons he appointed Khalid bin Al-Waleed to go to the Hamdan territory and to do Dawah to them. And it said that he stayed there for about 6 months doing Dawah, but very few people responded to the call of Khalid bin Al-Waleed. And again, maybe because of his style or his approach or the way he interacted with people or tried to explain Islam. But he didn't get a very positive response. And obviously this is an important tribe and area. So the Prophet then just agrees to or decides to dispatch Ali ibn Abi Talib to the same people. Now, so when he asks Ali to go, Ali says, look, O Prophet, you're sending me to a people who are old, and I'm young, and I need to make judgment. So can you help me there? So the Prophet made dua to Allah to make his tongue firm and to guide him. And the Prophet gave him advice that, O Ali, only judge between the people once you have heard from both sides of the story. So, both people. And so again, with that advice, he goes, and later on he becomes a really good judge, so much so that his reputation obviously precedes him, and even Abu Bakr and Umar and Uthman, they really rely on his judgment on sensitive matters. Now, and again, that's a really important lesson for us, that if things are happening, if there is a dispute, or if if something's happened that we don't know to the full extent, it's important to find out exactly what's happening and hear both sides of the story. You can't just go with one side and just throw all in on that. It's important to hear both sides of the story before you come and make up your mind. And again, we talked about that many years ago when we talked about the stories of the prophets, and I think it was Dawud al-Islam who was visited, and there was the story of the sheep amongst the brothers. So the Prophet he dispatched Ali with a letter and said, when you get there, open it up, and that's what he did. When he arrived in Hamdan, he opened the letter, read it out, and essentially, one of the things was that, to send Khalid bin Al-Waleed back, and if there were any of the Khalid's entourage who want to go back with him, then that's fine. Those that want to stay can stay. Anyway, Ali did his dawah, and he actually got a very positive response. Perhaps Khalid had laid the groundwork for him. So lots of people started to become Muslim, and the tribe decided to follow Islam. So Ali ibn Abi Talib wrote back to the Prophet ﷺ, informing him of these good tidings. And the Prophet ﷺ, when he was briefed of the contents of the letter, he was obviously overjoyed. He did sajda, raised up his head and said, "Peace be on Hamdan, peace be upon Hamdan." Then the other story, which I forgot to mention when we did Banu Tamim, the tribe that didn't quite take the Bashira, the glad tidings of becoming Muslim, and that was given, as it were, to Himyar. And so when the tribe has arrived, they're embracing Islam, and the Prophet then needs to decide to appoint somebody to be their sort of judge or leader or chief to decide what needs to be done with the people who understand Islam. So the Prophet he takes counsel from his two closest lieutenants, Abu Bakr and Umar. So Abu Bakr, he recommended someone from the Banu Mujashi tribe by the name of al-Qaqa bin Ma'bad. So Abu Bakr said, I think you should appoint al-Qaqa as the chief. But then Umar, he says, no, actually, I would rather you choose al-Aqra bin Habith as the person. And so, Abu Bakr turns to Umar and said, "Look, you only said that because I said that, and I wanted so and so." And Umar said, "No, that's not the reason." And so they started in front of the Prophet, in front of the other tribe, arguing amongst themselves, and it got fairly nasty that they were actually shouting at each other. So there's a full-blown shouting match. They began raising their voices and drowning out the voice of the Prophet, and he was probably very embarrassed in front of this tribe that Abu Bakr and Umar are arguing like this publicly. And that's when one of the verses of Surah Al-Hujurat, Surah 49 verse 2 was revealed, where Allah says, "O believers, do not raise your voices above the voice of the Prophet, or be loud to him in speech like the loudness of some of you to others, lest your deeds become worthless whilst you perceive not." So a really quite heavy telling off there for the senior Sahabi, and basically saying, you need to respect the Prophet. You shouldn't raise your voice in front of him, and you shouldn't speak above him at all. You can't speak louder than him out of respect and reverence for the Prophet and his position as Messenger of Allah. So this was quite I won't say a mild rebuke, but certainly a rebuke in the Quran. One of the lovely parts of this story is how Umar ibn al-Khattab, he reacted to this rebuke. He obviously reflected on it and recognized the mistake that he made, the error, and he needed to repent and rectify it. So it's said that after this, whenever Umar ibn al-Khattab would speak to the Prophet ﷺ, he would speak so quietly that you could barely hear him. In fact, he would speak so quietly that even the Prophet ﷺ could barely hear him. And Abdullah ibn Zubayr says that I heard the Prophet ask Umar to repeat himself because his voice was so soft now. So from the booming, voice and authority that is Umar ibn al-Khattab, he immediately internalizes this advice and practices it straight away. And again, this is a really important way of personal development that is essential for us to learn from. And the other thing that we can learn from this exchange is how Shaitan can pick upon our sort of disagreements and arguments as a way to fester discord between people. So that this potentially could have really blown up, because they're doing it in front of the Prophet, in front of a new tribe. And this is the ideal scenario for Shaitan to sort of destroy the chance of Islam blossoming amongst people, and certainly new people. So when things get heated, when we start to disagree and have arguments within family or within friends or in our dawah, we shouldn't let Shaitan have this opportunity to exploit this, and we should always finish in a positive and respectful way. But the other thing it teaches us is that we need to recognize that the Prophet obviously is the best of human beings, and then the Sahabi are the best generation. But even amongst the best of the Sahabi, they weren't perfect. They weren't angels. They had emotions, they had feelings, and they were quite forthright with a lot of these sometimes. And here you've got one occasion where Allah is saying you almost made all your deeds worthless by your action. So that's a really important lesson for us. And so it's not to belittle these senior Sahabi, but it's just to say that even at the time of the Prophet, there were people who were hypocrites, who were pagans, people with weak iman, very changeable iman, and as well as these strong stalwarts of the ummah with strong iman, and forthright holding on to the rope of Allah. Some people want to study Islam, other people are asking proper questions or theological questions or fiqh questions, so you get a whole spectrum of people, it just goes to show that the depth and variety of people in and around the time of the Prophet. And the other thing that I take from that is that here we have interfaith dialogue with the greatest of human beings, trying to explain simple concepts to other people, to the Christians in this case. And he is backed up by Allah's conversation with them in the Quran, directly, the words of Allah addressing these issues. Yet these learned Christians did not turn to Islam, despite this high level interaction. Allah's talking to them, the Prophet is talking to them, and they're in a Muslim environment in the Prophet's masjid, yet they still do not become Muslim. They still not do see the light. They are still essentially deaf, dumb, and blind in front of the truth. So our mission is not to convert people and not to badger them down. We have the truth. We pass it as best we can, and we leave the rest to them and between them and Allah. And again, just referencing what we talked about earlier, Amr ibn At-Tufail Ad-Dawsi, putting cotton in your ears. When people are walking around like that, there's nothing you can do, right? They need to take the cotton out of their ears for them to potentially be receptive. So again, just be polite and dignified in our interactions, and then do the best we can with wisdom. Another learning is that obviously the masajid should be the center of the community. Here you had here you had the mosque being used as a place of hospitality for non-Muslims, as a place for dawah. Non-Muslims, pagans, Christians coming into the holy mosque in Medina to observe what's going on, to ask questions, to have dialogue, right? even some of them were praying the Christian prayers in the Prophet's mosque at the time. So again, some important lessons that we can learn from that type of interaction. And we don't just say that you have your way, we have our, and we don't sort of say that all religions are correct. We recognize that we have the right way. Other people think that they have the right way, and we can't say everything is equal. We need to stand firm in what we believe and how we believe it. If other people refuse to accept that, well, that's up to them. We let them go back and live their own lives. The Prophet let the Christians of Najran go back. They had their treaty, they agreed to the political authority of the Muslims, but then they went back and the Prophet didn't chase them up on that, right? They weren't punished for it, So again, that is the height of a sort of what we may term a pluralistic approach, the height of tolerance, that they kept their beliefs completely. They just had to obey a different set of laws, the laws of the land. So again, that's an important lesson for us around that. And then the other lesson is what we talked around before about hospitality and of guests and travelers. You give them 3 days, and here these delegations are coming. There's no hotels in Medina. They're being put up in houses or in the mosque or other places like that, and they're being hosted by the Muslim community. And again, we should see guests and travelers as a blessing from Allah. And this is how early generations used to see them. And, at least for 3 days, we would look after them and honor them and be hospitable to them. And again, you get an indication of this in the story of Musa and Khidr as well, where they're in the town and they're not being looked after. And Musa takes umbrage to that. So there's some of the lessons, but we've now got to the stage where Islam has conquered the Arabs. It's united the Arab tribes. For the first time in history, the Arab Peninsula is under one rule, and Medina is the headquarters of the Islamic State. It's the headquarters of all of Arabia. And it shifted obviously from Mecca, which had previously been the spiritual center of the Arabs and the spiritual center of the Arabian Peninsula. You had some Bedouins who were fully behind the Prophet ﷺ and the Muslims, and there were other Bedouins, who were reluctant followers. And Allah references this in Surah Al-Tawbah, when he talks in verses 97 to 99 about the Bedouins, the worst in disbelief and hypocrisy and more likely to be in ignorance of the limits which Allah has revealed to his messenger. And Allah is the all-knower and all-wise. And of the Bedouins, there are some who look upon what they spend as a fine and watch for calamities for you. And on them be the calamity of evil. Allah is the all-hearer and the all-knower. And of the Bedouins, there are some who believe in Allah and in the last day and look upon what they spend in Allah's cause as approaches to Allah and a cause of receiving the messenger's invocations. Indeed, these are an approach for them, and Allah will admit them to his mercy. Certainly, Allah is oft forgiving and the most merciful. So, you had this sort of disparate geography and these tribal alliances and tribal society, now all pointing in the same direction. Makkah, Medina, Thaqif, all the way out to the Yemen and Bahrain, and the northern parts of the peninsula, all being unified by the Prophet ﷺ. So the impact of the Prophet's call is immense. And again, just the last few minutes, just to put this into context, because by studying it the way we do, and obviously over the time, we forget where it started and how transformational and revolutionary this whole mission of the Prophet was, and what he achieved. From being a poor orphan, just living his life, in Makkah at the time. Suddenly he gets the revelation, Iqra, and then his life changes, and then he's going around a period of self-doubt, and then the second revelation comes. You have it, Surah Muzammil and Surah Mudaththir, where Allah says, "Oh, you wrapped up in garments, stand to pray all night, except a little," and also, "Oh, you Muhammad, who's wrapped up in garments, arise and warn." So then for the next 20 years, he's doing this dawah. He's got the burden of this mission on his shoulders, and he needs to take it to all of humanity. And he knows that, he recognizes that. So after the second revelation, he has the interaction with close people and early converts, and generally people in Makkah know that he's claiming to be a prophet. He's got this new mission, but there's selected invites, and you got the early private stage of dawah and culturing, and then in Darul Arkam, and then there's the open dawah, the public dawah, where he's inviting people on a public level, and he's challenging the society and highlighting the hypocrisy of the way that they live. And then he gets the backlash. Despite his nobility, despite his background, they ban him from reciting the Quran in public. So there's the Quran ban. Then they start mocking him, and then there's slander against him. And then Abu Talib tries to tell him to tone it down and just sort of forget about things, and that none of that works. And then they start to compromise with him, offer him riches and kingship, etc. That doesn't work. Then they start torturing his followers, and then they try to do other propaganda and get trick questions against the Prophet. Then the persecution starts to the stage where the Prophet has to dispatch a lot of his followers to Abyssinia. And then after that, you have the conversion of Hamza and Umar, and then there is a slight change in their public posture. And then the Quraysh backlash even more, and then they start to have more negotiations with him to stop the dawah. And then when that doesn't work, they full-on boycott, and Banu Hashim is essentially boycotted or exiled to the tribe of the valley of Abu Talib. Again, this is unheard of in the Arab people. And then whilst they're in the valley, Khadija dies, Abu Talib dies, and then he's in a really difficult situation. He's got no one to support him. He's then on to the next phase of dawah, looking for political authority to establish Islam somewhere. He needs another base. Makkah is not going to be the base for Islam. So Allah forces him to go asking all the different tribes for nusra, for support in setting up Islam. And we know the story of him going to Taif and then being chased out. And then he's at a low point in his life. And then Allah blesses him with al-Isra wal-Miraj, where he sees the totality of everything and where it is. And that gives him strength to carry on. And then he gets the pledge from the people of Yathrib, the pledge of women, and then the pledge of war. And then he starts, sending the followers to Medina, or Yathrib at the time, and then he does the hijrah in the middle of the night, under fear of death, being assassinated, and then he completes the hijrah, builds the mosque in Quba, and then enters Medina by appointing the Nuqaba around him, around Medina with the daggers drawn in the leopard skins, and then he enters then as commander-in-chief, as the new leader of Medina. And then he has to create a new society. He builds the mosque in Medina, has to create a brotherhood, writes a constitution, has to deal with the the pagans. He has to deal with the hypocrites. He has to deal with the Jewish tribes. Set up the economy in Medina, and then the Qibla changes, and then he has to, hear all the issues around that, and then the starts to send missions to raid some of the Qurayshi caravans, and then some of the military expeditions, the Seerah as well as the Ghazwa, then the Battle of Badr, and then the tense situation before the Battle of Badr, and then obviously the victory of Badr. But then you have the assassination of Ka'b ibn Ashraf, the Battle of Uhud after that, then the expulsion of Banu Nadir for how they're treating the Muslims. We talked about the prophetic marriages as well, and then you had the second Badr, where the Quraysh didn't turn up, then the Battle of the Trench, then the issue with Banu Qurayza during the Battle of the Ditch, and then there's Banu Mustalik, and the slander, the ifk against Aisha. And then you had the process of wanting to do Umrah, setting out to do Umrah, then being prevented from Umrah, then negotiations where they at Hudaybiyah. Then the rumors that Umar had been assassinated, so the Prophet took the pledge, Bayat al-Ridwan, and then Suhail ibn Amr arrives, and then they sign the treaty, which they feel was a humiliating treaty, and they all go back really sad and depressed, and then Allah reveals, the sort of victory, and then as soon as they get back from Hudaybiyah, the Prophet changes his posture, and they become more assertive and aggressive, as it were, no longer on the back foot, and so they go and they attack and capture Khaybar, start sending letters to the various rulers, Heraclius, to Khusro in Persia, to Muqawqis in Egypt, and again Muqawqis, he sends back Maria the Copt and lots of other gifts, which we'll talk inshallah next week. And then the Prophet goes back to do the Umrah that was promised from Hudaybiyah. And then you have the conversion of people like Amr ibn al-As, Khalid bin Al-Waleed, and Uthman. And following that, the Battle of Mu'tah. And then Khalid obviously takes charge after that. Then the conquest of Makkah after the Khuzā had massacred Banu Bakr, the Quraysh panic, and then the Muslims start to prepare. Abbas, he converts with his cousins. Abu Sufyan converts just before the Prophet enters Mecca. He enters Mecca victorious. Then there's the victory speech, and then straight after that, there's the Battle of Hunain, and then the siege of Taif, and then spoils of war. And when the Hawazin come back looking for their things again. So all of these things have been going on, and then following Hunain, there's the Battle of Tabuk, which happened at the worst time of the year for the Muslims. They had to raise the funds, and the army leaves in the middle of summer before harvest season, and they camp at Tabuk. Letters get sent to Heraclius. Lots of miracles, but the Romans the Byzantines don't turn up, so the Prophet returns victorious. And then there's the story of Ka'b ibn Malik, and then we're into the 9th year of the Hijrah, where we talked about the death of Abdullah ibn Ubay, and then we talked about the Hajj of Abu Bakr, and then the year of the delegations. We've mentioned Taif, Musailama, Tamim, al-Dari, Najran, and the Yemen. So in that all context, if you just look at where the Prophet started and the mission and now where he's at, so you can see how transformative this mission is, and you need to put things in context of the Islamic call, of the Dawah, and of the ability to unite a tribal society, to have one vision, to become a civilization, to focus on, not just Arab unity, but human unity and social justice, and the Prophet mentions this in his Hajjat al-Wada, that no one is more superior. You can't say an Arab is superior to a non-Arab. A black is no superior. Is no inferior to a red-faced person, etc. We are all, Adam's children, created from dust. So so this, just complete paradigm shift, that this one man with his Sahabi has, swept away all of the Jahiliyyah and paganism that was there before. So again, just beautiful lessons, and Allah summarizes this, in the surah of the victory, when the victory of Allah has come and the conquest after Hudaybiyah, and you will see the people entering into the religion in multitudes. Then exalt him with your praise, your Lord, and ask forgiveness of him. Indeed, he is ever accepting of repentance. And again, a few hundred, 300-400 maximum, did hijrah from Makkah to Medina. And then, for the next, 7-8 years of Dawah, you had up to 10,000 people, that were there at the conquest of Makkah. But then within a couple of years, you've got 150,000 people in Hajjatul Wada. So you can see the exponential rise of Islam when Islam is implemented, when there is situations of peace and security, and Dawah can flourish and prosper, and you can see Islam in action. And that was the real victory that was afforded by the Treaty of Hudaybiyah, which allowed Islam to express itself. And again, it's just a wonderful place to finish, and a reminder of where the Prophet started and now where he's going as we enter into the last phase of his life, inshallah. So until then, do remember us in your du'as, do remember the Ummah in your du'as, do make du'a for all of the oppressed Muslims and all the people in suffering at the moment. And again, to allow these few weeks until Ramadan starts, we can get the most of them, inshallah. So until then, inshallah. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر جزاك الله خير. السلام عليكم.